Hi, and welcome to today's Fire Engineering Google Hangout. My name is Bobby Halton. I'm with Fire Engineering, Fire Rescue, Firefighter Nation, Fire Apparatus and Emergency Equipment, and FDIC. I'm joined today by several of my good friends, and today we're going to be talking about extrication. But before we begin, we just wanted to remind you to go to FDIC.com and register for this year's show. We're expecting about 35,000 firefighters to show up, and it should be a great time. There's over 21 hands-on training classes, including the new UL NIST live fire experiment class, where you can actually participate in a UL live fire experiment, as well as all the other great classes we always offer, from building collapse to forcible entry to live fire training. All that's available. 21 evolutions. There are 80 workshops that will be happening on Monday and Tuesday, 4-hour workshops. And then on Wednesday, kicks off with main program, and then 200 classrooms for you to enjoy. So join 35,000 of your closest fellow friends and fellow firefighters and come to Indianapolis on the 25th through the 29th of April and enjoy FDIC. Should be an incredible time, and I know that actually the 20th through the 25th, it should be an incredible time. I'll be there the 20th through the 25th. So come join us at FDIC, and thank you for joining us in today's Hangout on extrication issues. Before we begin, we'd like to remark on the passing of a great fire service legend and a wonderful man, a great friend of mine, and someone who was actually very helpful to me throughout virtually my entire career. It was Neil Mullane. Neil passed away last week and was laid to rest yesterday. He was a legendary Boston firefighter, a great Jake, a man who cared deeply about our profession, and a guy who never forgot where he came from. Wonderful man, and our condolences to his family, to Neil Jr., who is a captain with the Boston Fire Department and another good friend of mine. But Neil was a great man, and he'll be dearly missed. So on behalf of everybody here at Fire Engineering, our thoughts and prayers are with the family of Neil Mullane, and wonderful man. And if you don't know about him, Google him, learn a bit about a real firefighter and a real fire service icon. With that, welcome to today's Hangout on extrication. I'm going to go around the table and have everybody introduce themselves very quickly and tell you a little bit about themselves and what they do. Each one of the gentlemen with me today teaches for us, writes for us, does great stuff online, wonderful friends, and very competent and very skilled at what they do. I'm not, so I'll be asking them probably very simple questions, and they'll be giving us answers as best they can about issues in today's extrication. So with that being said, why don't we start with you, Dave? Why don't you introduce yourself to the gang? And also joining me is Erich Roden. Erich will finish it up at the end, and then we'll go into questions. But Dave, why don't you introduce yourself to the crowd and tell everybody a little bit about yourself and your history with extrication?
Sure, Bobby. Hi, everybody. My name's Dave Dalrymple. I'm the Education Chair for the Transportation Emergency Rescue Committee of the U.S. But my involvement with fire engineering has been pretty long-lived, too. I've been writing for fire engineering since 1999 and teaching at FDIC since 2003. Penwell's published my vehicle extrication DVD series. I've taught all around the world and such like that and met all sorts of great people, and I'm thrilled to do this today.
Outstanding. Isaac, why don't you tell folks a little bit about yourself?
Isaac Frazier, nice to meet you. I'm a Special Operations Lieutenant with St. Johns County Fire Rescue down here in Florida. I also own Tactical Advantage Training, and it's primarily extrication. I travel around. We did about 13 flight classes last year, and I just really work on the street-style version of what we do. And that's one of my big focuses. I do a lot of stuff with fire engineering, teaching at FDIC this year, and I'm blessed to be able to run pins on a very often basis at work, and then I just translate that so people can take it home, whether they're a department of 7,000 or they're a department of 7, and try to make it work for each individual department.
Isaac does a really cool piece for us. Almost every week he posts a really cool, quick extrication tip, and he does it in a way that's really nice, because even I can understand them. I mean, they're really good stuff, and we really appreciate that, Isaac, and thank you. And then next will be my great friend Aaron Heller. Aaron, why don't you tell everybody about yourself?
Hi, Bobby. Thanks. My name's Aaron Heller. I'm a captain in Hamilton, New Jersey, just outside of Trenton. I have about 30 years in emergency services, and a lot of that has been on fairly busy companies doing a lot of extrication work. And I'm fortunate, same as the other guys, that I own a training company. We travel all around the country, and we do a lot of extrication stuff. We've been very fortunate that the manufacturers have been real kind to us and provided us with a lot of great information and props and so forth. So whatever we can share is the key. You know, the more we share, it's been an honor to teach at FDIC for many years and continue that again in 2015. And it's just great to make new friends and just really talk about these things and debate what we can do better.
Outstanding. And then, oh, and by the way, I should have mentioned here that Aaron has agreed to be one of the co-hosts on Fire Engineering's Google Hangouts, which starting in January, the first Wednesday of every month is going to be training. The second one, and that'll be hosted by Steve Pegram and Aaron. And then the second Wednesday is going to be the Fireground, and that's going to be hosted by Mike Dugan and Bill Guston. The third is going to be Issues and Concerns in the Fire Service, and that's going to be hosted by Rick Lasky. And then the fourth is going to be Health and Wellness and Safety, and that's going to be hosted by PJ Norwood and Frank Ritchie. Erich and I will be joining them as our schedules allow, but they'll be having many, many guests. So your Google Hangouts going forward into the 2015 are going to be structured, and we're going to see how you, the audience, like that. The response so far has been overwhelming. We love having you. We appreciate your support on this. The viewership is just through the roof. We know right now we're competing with President Obama, so we probably got a lot of extra people. Didn't want to watch TV. I'm just kidding. But so thank you for having us. Let me, my good friend Erich Roden, why don't you introduce yourself before I get myself in political trouble here?
No worries, boss. Hey, welcome everybody. Again, I'm Erich Roden, the editor-in-chief of FireRescue and Firefighter Nation. I'm very excited about today's hangout. A tremendous amount of extrication expertise with us today. So with that, we need you guys to send us your comments. You can go to hashtag FETalk and give us your questions. These are the people to answer your questions, folks. So we have an hour here. We'd love to have your questions, and I say let's get to it.
Great. Hey, listen, Erich brought up a great question before we came on air, and I'm going to put it on my phone right now so I can get your Twitter questions. Again, that's hashtag FEChat, and we'll bring your questions to the group. But one of the things we wanted to talk about was how does weather affect extrication? How does the especially on the East Coast right now, or in the North, we're dealing with obviously cold temperatures, but how does the extreme heat, Isaac, where you are during the summer, and then even just other weather issues, how does the weather, cold, hot, and other issues affect extrication and how we conduct our extrication? And I don't know, whoever would like to kick it off, let's just go around the room.
You cold guys can have it first.
Well, I'll jump in. You know, I think either extreme of weather is going to not necessarily change what we do, but might slow us down a bit. In the cold weather, we have to be careful of the slipping and tripping hazards and the ice and the snow, but it doesn't really change what we're doing for the most part. Maybe stabilization becomes more of an issue because of the slipperiness of the surfaces we're on. Getting our equipment to the scene might be a little bit more of a problem. So, you know, as an incident commander, I may look at that a little more as potentially it's going to slow us down. So patient care and the medics and those who have to do interventions have to understand that that could be an issue for us.
Well, I have to, if I could jump in real quick, agree with Aaron, what Aaron has said, but also to add to that too, one of the things that might play a role, and from what I've seen from teaching overseas, especially in colder weather places, has been glass management. Simple things of sometimes you leave glass in longer to protect patients and such.
Wow, I hadn't thought of that. So delay in taking the windows in order to keep the environment a little better for the patients, that they aren't exposed to the cold and hypothermia and things like that.
Yeah, it's Bobby. I picked that up from teaching over at a company called ISET in Holland, and then over in Sweden, and that was something that they regularly do.
I would have never thought about that. That's a really good deal, because we show up wearing all our gear, but the patient's just in street clothes.
Yeah.
That's really good stuff.
Well, I won't say I'm going to talk about snow and cold because I'm not. When it comes to the heat down here in Florida, it is a totally different game. I mean, anything from the fuel for flash points, you know, it may be diesel, may not be, it may be a higher flash, but on a Florida highway with it 103 degrees out, you know, just the icy management of my rescuers when it may be something as simple as a side out or a door pop that takes 15 minutes, but 15 minutes in that humidity and heat is a lot. And for the patient too. There's a lot of things with the heat, really with gear and everything else that makes it difficult for the heat, and mainly for the rescuers.
Outstanding. Okay, so moving along from weather, one of the other things we wanted to talk about is, and Erich, this was your question, and you probably can frame it better than I can. Why don't we talk about, and Erich, why don't you lead us into this one, on language issues, which are a growing concern in urban settings.
I wouldn't say it's necessarily exclusive to an urban setting. When you obviously when we respond to extrications, we often really don't have the luxury of attempting to overcome language barriers and comfort the patient, etc. So I guess the question I want to pose to the group is, what kind of contingencies do we have when we have that language barrier and where we don't have anyone that speaks a lick of English? I mean, how do we communicate with these people to keep them, I guess, calmer, to kind of make them aware of what we're doing and what we intend to do with their vehicle, so as not to, I guess, creating more worry, doubt, or confidence in what we're doing. What are your thoughts, group?
I'll go first.
Yeah,
We cover a good amount of Spanish. Spanish is our primary. Outside of that, our department's been really good. They put together a packet of questions that they took from our rescuers, translated them into Spanish, so we have those on our trucks, or just a flip sheet that shows general questions that we'll ask. Are you injured? You know, where does it hurt? Some of the main questions that we'll ask, and we have that in Spanish. Now, outside of that, it just depends. We may just have to do the best we can through body language, but the department's been real good on trying to give us some general Spanish and some guidelines for the areas that we cover.
And we really haven't addressed it, and I think what Isaac's saying is a great thing. I've seen other departments that have done the same. And here in the middle of Jersey, we have pretty much every language you could think of. So other than predominant Spanish, we would have a tough time doing it with so many variety of languages. But I think it is. I think it's hand signs. I think it's your body language, and I think you have to go from there. And even if you're still, at least you're speaking English in a reassuring tone, and in a somewhat authoritative but reassuring tone, they understand that to a degree. So that doesn't hurt.
Kind of add in what, along with what Aaron has said and what Isaac was talking about, a sheet and such. One of the things that I've seen British Fire Service uses for not only language barrier, but if the person is deaf, it's basically pictures, and it kind of explains what they're going to actually do, and explain it out, you know, from cutting the vehicle to where does it hurt to all sorts of things like that.
Wow, that's a really neat idea to teach. I guess we could teach language issues. We could put out cards for languages that we know are in our region, you know, with some basic instructions, but also just some basic sign language. You know, this is the do you speak sign language? This is speak. But just knowing some basics is really helpful. I know a little bit of sign language, and in my career, it came in handy several times, especially with trauma victims. Anthony Correa tweeted into us, and thank you, Anthony, for doing that. He said that hypothermia is a huge issue as it relates to trauma. I was a medic. I was terrible at it. It was 20-something years ago, so I barely remember much of it. But can anybody speak to that, about how hypothermia affects trauma victims? I wish we had Mike McAvoy with us. I'm not a medic.
Nor am I, but and honestly, Anthony Correa could probably talk about it the best. I worked. He was my first EMT instructor over 20 years ago. But
Oh, wow.
but it is a serious issue, and we've had that problem trying to keep the victims warm. And it goes back to what Dave said about that glass maintenance, which is not something that's commonly taught here in the States. But that would be a serious issue. And again, I can't speak to it medically, so I don't want to go that far.
Well, it's interesting, and it kind of, I guess I'll ask you guys, and who typically handles, when I was on the line, extrication was basically handled by the truck company, and it was assisted by the rescue occasionally, but most of the time it was handled by the truck company did the extrication, and they would carry, you know, a complement of tools, and then our squads had more tools that they could call if they needed advanced stuff. But there was a standard complement on one unit, and then a much larger complement of more advanced stuff on the squads. What are some of the models out there that you're familiar with, or that you guys have worked with, or that you recommend in terms of who should handle extrication in your organization, given, you know, I guess the 4 or 5 big main types?
Well, I'll go ahead and start. One of the big things that we do is we run squad companies. For our department, we run 3. That would be a big heavy rescue. I know Florida's names are a little different. Rescues are medic units and etc. But a squad isn't a big heavy rescue. We rely and have really gone on relying on engine companies to do those first steps, the important steps that a lot of times are overlooked. Your glass management, stabilization, pulling of the plastic, a lot of that work, hose line on the ground, and stuff that's very important that I think a lot of times gets overlooked in the advanced realm. So we use engines a lot as our first do, get everything prepped up, and then our squad companies come in and back each other up and do the primary extrication. If it's big rig, anything else involved, train, and we'll send a used our squad with just more and more equipment.
So you're saying that your engines go and do the basic stuff, and then your squads come in and they do the follow-up?
Yes, the engines will do the basic, as in not the cutting portion. They carry combi tools and can if it's dire, but they get the scene prepped for the squads to get there, and then the squads will start the extrication process and start to work. And then if it's something extensive, we work with wrecker companies that will respond, Class D wreckers or bigger if they're needed.
So what are you carrying? What are the engines carrying that's different than the squads then? What would be like a standard complement of tools, basic tools for the engine, and what would be the standard on the squad?
For us, basic engine complement would be a combi tool. For hydraulics, high lift jacks, limited cribbing, some step cribbing, limited amount of chains, maybe an air chisel, and that's about it. And then a squad will have everything else besides that. Multiple sets of tools, Paratech struts, big rig struts, the 610s. I mean, concrete breakers, torches, pretty much anything you can think of, the squads will come in with.
Outstanding. So, now, that's how your organization handles it?
That is. And it seems like a lot of the departments will run truck companies. A department to the north runs truck company, and then they'll have a heavy rescue if it's extensive, something more than a door pop or a normal extrication. But it totally depends from all the places that I've taught. It depends from place to place. Sometimes they have heavy engines that just have extra complements over a normal engine company, and some run just for heavy rescues. It totally depends nationally.
Aaron or Dave, you want to chime in there? Erich, anybody else want to chime in about?
Sure. It's again, it depends on your region, and it depends even not even state to state, but really county to county and town to town. The town that I live in is an all-volunteer fire department on weekends and evenings with career staff during the day, and they operate a heavy rescue and do a fine job with their heavy rescue and go all over the place with it. Where I work, we're mainly a career department for a large township, and we operate on basically a SOC concept with SOC companies. The company that I'm on, we're equipped to handle pretty much everything a heavy rescue is. short of some of the water rescue equipment. So it just depends on where you're at and what they're doing. You know, we've taught in places where they're trying to do everything off small little utility trucks and things of that nature. So it really depends on what your staffing is going to be and what kind of concepts you can really follow through with what you have. But like I said, the rig that I work on, you know, it's full complement of hydraulic tools, hand tools, struts, airbags, torches. So we can function for quite a while on our own before we really truly need help, unless of course we're involved on the highway with, you know, the big trucks and tractor trailers and buses, and then obviously it's a full special ops program. And like Isaac said, we try to get involved with our heavy wrecker companies in the area because they can assist us in ways that no fire department can.
Well, I know both you and Isaac just said that, so before we get to Aaron and Erich, well, let's get to Aaron and Erich, and then let's get back to that wrecker comment. And by the way, Keith's, let me just get Keith's name right here. Keith Stakes tweeted in, he said, heavy rescues are in charge of extrications with tool carrying engine and truck companies as manpower and equipment caches. And thank you, Keith, for sending that in there. I'm getting several much like Keith's and some other suggestions. So let's get back to that wrecker question in a minute, but Erich and Aaron, you want to chime in on some of the other ways that folks deploy for rescue?
Well, Dave could probably jump in, especially here in Jersey, with the rescue squads and the first aid squads, because a lot of them are not affiliated truly with the fire department, but are in control of a lot of extrication work. Not where I work and not where I've been, but I know that Dave could speak well to that.
Wow.
Well, yeah, like Aaron said, depending on where it is, at least Jersey-wise, you could have fire service doing rescue, or the police department of various different types doing the rescue, and EMS rescue, and sometimes all three. Some places are busy enough to where you kind of need all three, too. Plus, not only the rescue squads for the fire service, but also, like Isaac had said, about the truck companies and such like that.
Erich, you want to chime in about Milwaukee and the Wisconsin area?
Yeah, I'll tell you, and I guess this would be a good segue into, I guess, a further part of the discussion here. Obviously, we have fireground priorities, initial incident operations that we're conducting, regardless of the number of people we have on scene. Obviously, where I work, I have the luxury of trucks all over the place with Jaws and two rescue companies that like to get there as fast as possible. So, therefore, I have an understanding of, or I guess a conceptualization of what I'm going to have within the first 5 minutes or in the first 6 or 7 minutes at my extrication incident. But my question to the group is, and those watching today to chime in on as well, is what are the first few things that we need to accomplish at a vehicle extrication, regardless of the number of people we have arriving? And I guess this correlates to volunteer fire departments, and I guess encompasses every volunteer fire departments are a combination in our career. So to the group and to those watching today, what are those first few things we need to get a handle on as soon as we pull up?
Can I go jump in here?
Please. Yeah, it's a hangout. Whoever's first is first.
Okay. Well, besides some of the obvious things of sizing up the situation and vehicle stabilization and stuff like that, one of the things that's really critical today, more so than ever before, is power isolation. Getting the key, taking control of the key, turning the vehicle off, because most vehicles now, about 60%, we're dealing with proximity ignition. And then if we can find the battery today to take it out of service, basically lockout, tagout for power for vehicles. That's really becoming really critical, not only motive power-wise, but safety system-wise and everything else.
Okay.
You want to go, Aaron?
Aaron, you want to jump in? Just jump in, guys. Pretend it's a union meeting and you're getting screwed again.
Well, I think for us, a lot of it is scene safety right off the bat, because we're pulling up on a lot of things that we never saw before. Contents of vehicles. With where I work, the heavy truck traffic is just increasing constantly. So knowing what we're going into is really a key. For us, we're not as concerned, I would say, as others with some of the fire end of it, simply because we've got multiple companies coming in and we're all assigned to duty, although we're all cognizant of it. But you know, the stabilization is key, and knowing what we're seeing, recognizing what we're seeing, and recognizing the type of vehicles. You know, where I work, we have a Tesla charging station now in a mall right near our firehouse. That's changed the dynamic of the vehicles that are on the road. So we have to be heads up that, are we dealing with a Tesla or not now?
Yeah, I'm gonna agree with him. We have I think one of 3 state points for Tesla charging in my first do too. So it's a totally different thing. But I think, just like everybody said before, is you have to look at your efficiency once you get there. I mean, we can send 15, 16 trucks, and if each one are trying to duplicate the exact same thing, that was one of the bad things. You come in, you stabilize, the next crew walks up with step chocks, the next crew walks up with step chocks, the next one, and we're duplicating efforts. So we've really tried to work on efficiency for every part. Everybody's kind of got a game plan as we go up. One's pulling plastic, you know, for high strength areas and airbags. One is working on stabilizing the car. One is working on this, and it gives us that base guideline, so we're as efficient as we can be. And that 30 seconds, it isn't a big deal, but 30 seconds, 30 seconds, 30 seconds, 30 seconds over a period of a call, you know, wastes a ton of time, and the patients just don't have it.
You know, that's a great lead-in. Tony Correa again shot a great question, and thank you, Tony. We can't thank you enough for your sending a great question, and you just touched on it, Isaac. How do you manage the complications of coordinating? And I think Dave said it best. You got cops, firefighters, and then private ambulance or rescue services. What are some of your recommendations to folks out there for how to coordinate that and make it work? And then, you know, and if you wouldn't mind discussing SOPs, training, run the whole gamut.
Well, the training is where I think it starts. Without training everybody together, you're going to have that just mix mash of everything coming together and nothing working in concert with each other. So we have to do that, and the training and the SOPs go hand in hand, because we have to base our training on what we're going to do. I went and trained in a place out west, and it was a small volunteer department, and they based their SOPs from fire all the way down to rescue on kind of an FDNY style staffing, when they were lucky if they got 2 to 3 people in the middle of the afternoon. So you base your SOPs on what you have, and then you have to train everybody to that same SOP. We've run into some bumps in the road with a private ambulance service based out of the hospital in the town where I work, but over the years they've come to accept what we do, and we've come to work with them better, and that's really the key. It's the communication between the interagency and other agencies.
Yeah, I'll totally agree with him on that. We're lucky enough to work with our troopers a lot. That's our primary police force on the highway that we're going to deal with, and we work with them on calls so much that, you know, it starts to flow after a while. Now, with engine companies, it's the same thing. You know, if we sit back as a squad company, a USAR company, and say, hey, you know, we're not going to train with those guys, and then the first training we have is on the call, it's not going to go well. You know, we have to train with everybody, and that's from the IC, our chief officer, down to our engine companies. And talking like we did before, to me, the trucks don't matter that much. I teach that a lot in the training that we do, is you're worth 10 times more in knowledge than that truck. The truck's not going to fix a call for you, whether you're on a 200-foot long tiller with the baddest tools it's ever walked, or an F550. It's us and our trainers that are going to do the work that needs to be done. And, you know, there's a ton of training out there. I mean, just an incredible wealth of knowledge out there to pick. Every time I teach, I pick something else. I'll see something Aaron does, or bornextrication.com, or all these different places. I pick stuff all the time, and I get to do it on the highway a lot. But it just lets me, we have to continually be, like Chief Halton always says, a student of the game. We have to keep going and train on every single level.
I kind of go along with what everybody else has said as well. I mean, Isaac makes a good point, and same thing with Aaron. One of the things that training and education, but also kind of a best practices approach to everything. Not one way will do it every single time, but the more that we can get consistency across the board will help things. And an example of that, even though it's kind of a stretch, one of the places I've trained at in Holland, all the emergency services train the same program, same basic way, whether it's fire service, ambulance, or even trauma services. They all have to have the same training at a base level, and then depending on their roles and responsibilities, that's added to it.
Yeah, he's got a great point on that when he talks about having a structured. Our department's been great. We've done a Plan A, what we'll call a Plan A procedure. For example, a door pop. We'll have a certain way we do a door pop that we call our Plan A. So when we train, everybody in the department knows our Plan A method. So I pull up, the engine company will say, hey, we're working on our Plan A door pop, and we may change it to a Plan A side out. Typically on I-95, it's a Plan Z almost every time. We don't typically get to do, our A plan, but it gives a basis for everybody in a core knowledge to start to work.
Wow, so it almost sounds like from a fire perspective, we've got to the point where we've become so refined in our extrication issues that we have a Plan A, much like a single family residential or two-story single residential or a three-story walk-up or strip mall, to where people kind of know the play and can go to work almost independently. Am I hearing that correctly?
Absolutely. Like our dispatch, for example, we're responding as a squad and we hear a vehicle on its side. I don't have to say anything. Those guys already know we're going struts for this, or we're going, if that's our Plan A for a vehicle on its side. Typically it'll be a roof flap and stabilization. There's some key points, but yes, I mean, vehicle on its roof, vehicle on all wheels, it totally changes en route the way that we're going to go. And if you don't train on it, it's going to be a whirlwind every time you go. But if you train on it and get that basis, and I think a lot of you see tradition guys, all these trainers go back and they're going back to the basics. With extrication, I think we've got so advanced that we forget about the basic stuff. Yeah, we can take a door off and do a fancy lift, but the car is still running and it's not stabilized at all and it's rolling down the hill.
Erich, do you want to chime in before I have a great thought? But go ahead. You have a thought, Erich?
No, I had a question later in the discussion. So no, I say you should probably stick to this one. What are the simple operations, or I guess what are the foundational principle operations, extrication or operation, I should say, that everybody should know? What are the basics? I mean, we always say back to basics in every type of training format and every type of topic or curriculum. But with regards to extrication, what are the back to basics or basic operations?
Well, I think, the back to basics may have actually changed a little bit because we have to start off with recognition that we really didn't need 10 and 20 years ago. So it really is a basic that you have to recognize what you've got, the type of vehicle, the cargo it may be hauling, obviously the number of potential patients and things like that. But I think recognizing when you pull up what you're seeing is the first basic you have to really grasp, and a lot of people don't have that yet. And then we go from there with our stabilization and with our power control, as Dave said. I think once we get to those, the rest will start to flow.
Yeah, I think one thing that's overlooked, and he discovered on it a little bit, is the actual patient portion. That's the reason we're there. We're not there to do anything for the car. We're there for the patient. And so often you'll see, it'll be 20 minutes into the call and nobody's even made patient contact yet. Or, we talk about the aggressive medic. I am a medic. I know we were talking about it earlier. Getting somebody into the car, if I can do a quick little, spread on a roof line to get a rescue in there to start patient care during that 20-minute period to extricate them, that's a big one. Any of the stabilization, any of the things they talked about, glass management, cut around points on high-strength steels, all that, and recognition is good, and it's all key stuff. But we have to remember, it's not just about popping doors and doing the fun stuff. The patient is the main reason we're there. And I think a lot of the basis one of the things I teach a lot is the mental aspects of you know, being a squad officer or being a squad member or any of us and talking to the patients. You know, I can't imagine being trapped in a car and having guys just sitting there and doing stuff, and typically, especially if you're in a doctor's office, if they're not talking, something's wrong. You know, I want them to talk. I teach my guys a lot to talk to the patient, ask if they have any children, and really get into their mind, and typically they'll stop screaming and start telling you what's wrong with them. And that's one of the big things that I think is overlooked.
Wow. And I apologize if I'm looking down a lot, but you guys are blowing Twitter up here. We're getting a lot of great questions and feedback. One of the folks out there, and thank you for tweeting. I can't even pronounce their handle here, but I apologize. But they said they wanted you to talk a little bit about some of the new challenges that firefighters and responders are facing in terms of extrication. So if you could speak a little bit to that and about some of the new construction methods and standards, and how is all that working out? And I think also a side question is, how do you manage to get to that level of training, because it's hard to get your hands on those vehicles to train on them. So what are some of the new issues, and how are you addressing them? And what, you know, I heard Isaac just talk about cutting the reinforced steel. Let's talk about some of those issues and some of those tactics and techniques.
Well, Bobby, I think a lot of things are going to change in the next 5-10 years, especially material-wise and construction concepts. And the basic thing, and Isaac said it too, about patient management. A lot of things, people are forgetting about patients, not literally, but figuratively, so to speak. And that all equates into this whole conversation about the change of high-strength materials, different kinds of materials like composites and things like that won't act like metals or alloys. What this does is, because it takes more time, and Aaron hit upon that too, that we need to take more time to evaluate things better. Time is not what patients have. So we have to figure out and make definitive decisions fairly quickly, fairly rapidly, based on what we can see and what we evaluate. And also, like Isaac said about training, if you don't have the education level to do some of these things, and even though we talk about back to basics type of things, one of the things we did at FDIC this past year was give all of our students a basically what basics mean today, and we did it as a just by each letter. I really don't have time to go through it now, but all these things tie together now, and that's why we have to be on our A game all the time.
Yeah, and to add to what Dave's saying, you know, the structural design and the platform design that we're seeing today, you know, is not what we've seen in the past. It's not even close. And the problem that we have is instructors will go out there who haven't really learned any new tactics or learned what they're up against. And you can do it. You can study it, you know, online. You can look at the material that the top rescue guys are putting out in the publications. But you still have to be able to separate the BS from the truth. I watched a video the other day of an instructor who's a fairly well-known guy, and I'm sure he's very well respected in his region, teach something that was completely false. He taught a maneuver that he said is the way to do it, and it will not work on a new vehicle because of the construction, because of the ultra-high strength steel. But he was teaching it on, you know, something from the early 90s in a junkyard. And the problem, my fear would be that hits, you know, YouTube, and everybody sees it and says, yeah, that's a great idea. And that is a problem. So being a student of the game is huge. Where you get that experience, and not to plug it because we're on with you, Bobby, but you go to FDIC or you go to whatever large training event you can where the guys who have really studied are presenting. And I think that's the key. We've been very fortunate, and I know that the guys on this panel have been fortunate that the engineers have shared a lot with us, but they're only going to share it with you when they realize that you're there to do the betterment of the job, and it's not there to blow your own horn or pound your chest and boost up ego to teach. It's about sharing that new knowledge. But we're looking at talking with Volvo. The last time I had the conversation with them a couple weeks ago, you're looking at 5 times the ultra high strength steel in an XC90 right now than you saw 2 to 3 years ago.
Well,
That's
why? And I apologize for my naivete, but why is that? What does the vehicle gain, or what does the I mean, is that to make the vehicle safer, or what? Where is that, and where is that steel being put that's 5 times stronger?
Well, it's certainly making it safer. It's going to make it easier for them to meet the insurance standards and to get their 5-star ratings. It actually is going to lighten up the vehicles to a degree, so that helps with their mileage and other things. And I'm sure Dave can speak to it because I know he's had these same conversations. I'm sure. So, but those we're seeing it. Obviously, you're going to see it in the roof rails, the B posts, the A posts, and throughout, and now even in the seats and the pedals.
That's true. Like Aaron had said, that's one of the things that all the way around, what drives a lot of this stuff is what the public wants and what the manufacturers perceive what the public wants. And then it falls down to regulatory agencies and government, both here and overseas. But one of the things that across the board, most vehicles are made for a world platform now. There's very few changes that occur that 10 years ago you'd have a different car that was in Europe that's over here. Now that's no longer true. What's sold here is sold overseas. So whatever the more stringent standards become, that's what the cars are going to be based upon. So it just makes it more difficult all the way around.
And everybody wants to have that 5-star safety rating on their vehicle. I know my daughter-in-law is a big Volvo fan, and she always talks about the safety of the Volvo. Anything else other than the steel? What are some of the? I mean, I see all kinds of stuff these days. Keyless entry. I'm always interested. I saw we had a spat of fires involving Teslas that were related to the batteries. What are some of the precautions that rescuers should be worried about in terms of these hybrid cars, these electric alternative fuel cars?
I think one of the hardest parts, I'll just hit on it real quick, I think one of the hardest parts is the recognition of the hybrid. You know, you get a rollover, it's rolled 13 times on an interstate or roadway, that hybrid badge doesn't stay there. You know, there's a total change of realistic version of what's happening, and the recognition first, and if you can even make access. You know, they may have a plug that disables the battery in the console, but I've got 3 trapped patients in that car that I can't even get to their chest. I'm not going to be able to access. So a lot of it's recognition, avoidance, the airbags everywhere. I mean, it's a totally different game than it was, and you have to really, you know, since we've been talking, something's changed on vehicles. You know, it's a ever evolving thing.
You mean like every 11 seconds another baby is born, kind of thing? I mean, it's that dynamic?
I think it was every 48 seconds a vehicle changes.
Wow.
I just made that up, but if you're confident with your answer,
Sounds good.
If you're confident it sounds good, it works, right?
Yeah. Yeah,
I think
Bobby,
it's already in the textbook too. I think I just saw it in the textbook.
I'd like to bring up something kind of you know, I know there's a myriad of complicated issues as to deal with, you know, batteries and all of the new things that are the airbags that are in vehicles today, and when you're doing extrication, and we probably don't have the time to touch on all of it, but I've got a great question from a wonderful friend, Christine Saracino, and she asks, what is best for stabilization? Shocks, airbags, struts, or any combination of all 3?
It totally depends. I'll jump in first. It totally depends on the orientation of the vehicle. Vehicle on its side, we typically go to struts. That's one of the safest things for us because your angles and making the triangles for strength is a big portion of that. Vehicle on its wheels, it's a chock for us. Airbags we don't use unless we're lifting or something of this sort. But you know, it totally depends on the orientation of the vehicle. Vehicle on its roof, vehicle on its side, and that's just my take on it.
Yeah, and terrain. What type of terrain it's on is going to play into it as well.
In what ways?
Well, I mean, if we have vehicles on loose gravel, we have to be more concerned than if it's sitting on all fours in the middle of the highway, things like that. You know, hills, and things of that nature.
Okay.
To go along with the rest of the guys, what's already been said is really true. But to filter back into the questions we talked about before about technology issues and stuff like that, even technology affects simple things as stabilization. Bobby, you had mentioned about a Tesla. Tesla, the battery is the entire bottom of the car from nose to tail.
Right.
So that changes the center of gravity if it's upside down or on its side. And even as we take parts of the vehicle off, because of the weight and the energy absorbed and things like that, the car will actually unstress and move. And kind of, we got it locked in the beginning, and we'll take the roof off, or we'll even take glass out, and the stabilization will change. It will become loosen up a little bit, things like that.
Wow, I had no idea. I had no idea. I saw the fires issues. What are some of the concerns in terms of when you're at one of these vehicles for the instance of fire with these highly energized vehicles? How can we mitigate that? And what would you recommend we do in terms of being prepared for vehicle fires nowadays?
Well, Bobby, I did some stuff with Bill Gunston a couple years back about his department wanted to rewrite their SOP in light of XEVs. XEVs is the buzzword now for all alternative fuel vehicles, whether it's hybrid, a plug-in, fuel cell, all electric, whatever. SAE has coined all these vehicles under one term now. So one of the things that that Bill and I talked about, and NFPA has done a lot of stuff with battery pack fires and research and stuff like that. Water by itself, unless you can get a lot of it and apply it in massive quantity, that's the only way to do it. Otherwise, you're going to have to use some sort of wetting agent and such like that, because it's not just the battery itself, but it's the combination of that with combustible alloys and the like.
It's true. I will say that there is a good source. Most of the companies, actually, some of the guys on this panel, I'm sure, have worked with the individual companies. Say Toyota's hybrid. Toyota typically will have a response guide for fires of their vehicles, or Tesla, for example, or Rex with Teslas. I talked to one of the Tesla managers, and their general guide for response for rescuers, and they may have cut points on the car that are marked and recommended, or any of that. There's a lot of response guides and a lot of resources out there. We just have to look them up.
I heard that there are also some apps you can download that have a lot of that information. Are you guys aware of that?
Yeah, Bobby, a couple of them that are pretty good, at least free ones. Extricate, and that's EXTRI. Extricate. Sorry, I'm having a brain fart here. But that's basically all hybrids and electric vehicles, and it's across all platforms: Android, PC, Apple, whatever. And the other one is QRG. That's done by the National Consortium for Alternative Fuels out of West Virginia University. The nice thing between the two, using the two together, at least for alternative fuel vehicles, Extricate shows you all the hazards. It's almost a glass cutaway, but QRG gives you tactics and things like that to use. So I think that's like a win-win thing.
And most guys have their phones with them, or tablets on the rigs, or something that they can do some lookup if it's that dire. We found with the alloys in the vehicles that the fires change drastically. But that's not something new. We were dealing with that with Volkswagens when I came on the job years ago with the magnesium. So the first time I went to a Volkswagen fire, they had problems getting it out with the engine, and they literally backed a 7,500-gallon tanker up to it, opened the jet dump, and just flooded the thing. and amazingly, the fire went right out, and they didn't have any problems. So it's not necessarily a new problem with the alloys so much, but the electricity and the safety systems have changed the game drastically.
Hey, Aaron, you're going to have to help me a little bit, because if my chief pulls up and I'm on an extrication on my cell phone,
I'll back you up if you're looking.
You know, I'll tell you, with some of the new technology out there, like the iPad command people, and who are developing some great technology out, some friends of ours out of California, and all this, the rest of it, it's really going to become more commonplace for an officer to probably have a tablet out or something out to assist them, whether it's a fire or an extrication or whatever, because there's just so much great information management tools out there now to help us be more effective on the fire ground. I want to inject a little, and Tony Correa sent a good note. He said, regarding NVT challenges, what you practice today, good chance won't work in the future. I think that's kind of some interesting, an interesting thought. You know, that to go to your every 48 seconds. That's going to get quoted somewhere. You know, Isaac. Now, every 40, according to the Isaac Frazier 48-second rule, that a vehicle has changed. We had a very significant event happen. I'm a volunteer training officer for the Limestone Fire Protection District, and 2 weeks ago, or maybe even 10 days ago, we went to an extrication along Highway 20, which is a major thoroughfare here in Oklahoma, and one of our firefighters, captain now, was re-entering the vehicle. He had taken our F550 brush truck to the event, and everything was over, and we were picking up, and a man in an F350 was looking at the wreck, didn't see Joe on the other side of the road, and plowed into the back of the brush truck as Joe was entering it before he put his seatbelt on or even put the key in the ignition, and injured Joe pretty severely. And wrecked the back of the F550. What do you guys recommend to folks in terms of traffic management and best practice while we're at these scenes? And where does that fall in your priority list?
Chief, I'll go first. The highway, and I'm saying roadways in general, I love fighting fires, absolutely more than anybody else. But the dangerous place for me is a roadway, and for my guys, and that's a fact. We've really looked at, there's a lot of training out there. The department to the north of us had their heavy engine get hit last year on scene, and I always tell people, if they don't see those tetrahedrons that are 14 feet tall, they're not going to see you in a vest or anything else. So we just really practice in our management to park, block, wheels out or wheels in approach, whichever direction on the highway we are, to push the truck if it does get struck away from the scene, and just really work on that. And even as IC or even as a squad officer, is our placement of our people in our vehicle. I run a 3-man truck. You know, our seat placement in the truck is dependent on our highway. So like 95 being north-south, my back step sits directly behind me on every call. So if we got the wreck going southbound, he'll always be on the outside shoulder. If we're going northbound, he'll always be on the outside shoulder. And I'm on the outside shoulder, and sometimes we'll leave the driver in if we don't think it's a ton to it. We'll leave him in the cab until we confirm that there's something going on, because the chances of us getting hit with line of duty fatalities on the roadway is high.
Wow.
Yeah, that's absolutely the case with us too. We try to run the rig as the blocker. We do have that problem on the highways where the troopers don't like to close it all the time, and they'll want you to work with a lane or two open. And I can tell you, the nights I've been on the Jersey Turnpike with nothing closed down, it's scary. It's a dangerous place to be. So we do our best to utilize a blocker. What I've seen throughout my career is on the smaller country roads, using the blocker works fine, and if they're going to hit something, let them hit the rig. We can always buy another rig, but there's just so many of these incidents that are going on now, and it would probably be a neat thing to document. You know, how was the rig positioned when the members were hit? because we're seeing this on a darn near weekly basis, and maybe that would be something that would convince chiefs and police departments to, hey, let's really protect ourselves here. And the cops are in a worse position than we are in most cases because they have a much smaller vehicle.
And it's a good.
I'll tell you what, gang, we have about 5 minutes left here. I got a great question from Bill Carey. I want to interject here, which would be a great way to close out the hour here. And I guess it encompasses everything we've been talking about. It's a good way to close the hour. With alternative fuels and vehicle batteries, their weights, configurations, positions in vehicle, etc. The different alloys, the different ways they react with fire. What are, and I'll let each one answer individually, but Bill Carey asked, what are you guys looking to see from manufacturers in 2015? With everything that's coming, with everything changing every 48 seconds, what are we actually looking for from our manufacturers? So we'll start with Aaron, and we'll go right from Aaron to Daryl to Isaac. What do you guys think?
I think that the first thing that I would assume you're going to see much more of, and through our research, is you're going to see a lot more ultra high strength steel, and you're going to see more and more tools that are simply not capable of making those cuts. That and the glass management's going to change, and I know Dave has spoken about glass management earlier. Those are two things that we definitely have to get on our game with and really try to understand.
And kind of go along with what Aaron has said and what I've said before too. One of the things that glass management wise, 2017, everything that's made for consumption in North America, glazing wise, and I'll say glazing instead of glass, is everything's going to be laminate or polycarbonate. Right. So that means that glass is not going to just break and fall out anymore. So couple that with the fact that the vehicle is going to get stronger. Your tools, the interaction between them are going to be problematic because maybe tools just won't break things. We're going to have to change some of the things that we do. And we've all said about in the future, it's going to be a game-changing environment. Some of the things that we did in the past might come back and be relevant again, but there's going to be things that have to be evaluated and done differently in the future.
Yeah, I'll totally agree. He covered glass. Glass is a big one. Aaron was covering high-strength steel, and those are absolutely the biggest things. Airbags are absolutely everywhere, under hoods now for pedestrian striping, and seat belts. The list goes on and on. I think the biggest challenge will be, and from them, is the high-strength steel, the glass, and all that in relation to fire department budgets. Most departments are not getting tools as often just by budget that's going to cut these things. So we've got that, and we're not really getting cars to cut on as much anymore because the scrap price is so high. So there's going to be a lot of really working with those companies to see those cut-around points to make the cuts, even if you have a 2008 Combi tool and not the brand new fanciest thing.
You know, just to dovetail on that topic, we talked about some of these issues, particularly what Isaac just mentioned, with the tools being not with budget cuts and all that, with us not picking up the tools as rapidly as we used to. The issue of working with wreckers, and again, excuse my ignorance, but do the wreckers ever help supplement the tools for you? And what are some of the things you can do with some of these wrecking companies? Because I just think it's fascinating that the interface between us and all these different agencies, when you talk about a vehicle accident, whether it's the PD, the wrecker company, the ambulance people, even just the people that run the highway, do the wreckers, when you're working with the wreckers, is there any support system there? Or do they have anything that's useful, or any way that you could recommend to folks to work better with them?
There absolutely is. There's no doubt about it. We have an MOU with an individual wrecker company that has a certain response time. We've been training with them for years, and they'll give us a heavy Class D rotator or wrecker for our rescues. Many of the heavy entrapments on 95 and the places where I cover are with big rigs, semis, and it's outside of the realm sometimes of our equipment, even though we have the newest, fanciest stuff. When they can come in less than 5 minutes, lift the truck up, no problem, and totally we could winch the car out and be totally out of the situation. So yeah, we work with them a lot. However, it's taken years of working with them and training. We just had a training event last weekend with Southern Record, one of them we use. But it is one of the most underutilized. When I go teach, I'll ask, hey, are you guys doing it? And very, very seldom are they working with an incredible resource.
Yeah, I agree. They've been really, you couldn't put a price tag on the abilities that they bring to us. Just the fact they work with heavy equipment every day, and we don't. You know, other than our apparatus, it's not our forte as much as it's theirs, unless we really train and are really specialized. So utilizing just their basic knowledge, let alone their tools, and the good heavy record companies come in with more airbags than we have, you know, with low pressure systems as well as our high pressure systems. They come in with a lot of stabilization equipment, and their apparatus itself is designed to do this work where we aren't necessarily designed so. So that again goes into just like structural firefighting with the pre-planning. You get them on your box alarms before this ever happens, and you work with them. Good things happen for the patients and us.
Well, listen, I know we're coming up against the hard break. Tony Correa, got to thank you very much for great comments and suggestions. Tony also said that probably in the future we'll be wearing Google glasses and they'll upfeed stuff to us while we're looking at it, which is for an old guy like me, that sounds like George Jetson, but I love it. I think it's a pretty neat idea. Hey, before I say goodbye to my guests, one quick thing to remember: if you want to come to FDIC this year and hear Aaron and Dave and Isaac speak, and hear Erich speak and present and take training, there's a great way you can come. Absolutely free. I mean absolutely free. If you go to FDIC.com right now and click on the Honeywell Scholarship Deal, you can nominate somebody with a simple iPhone video. Just take an iPhone video of yourself saying why you think one of your friends should go to FDIC. Honeywell's going to give away 25 full free rides. That's airfare, hotel, and registration, completely free for 25 serious firefighters. Now, if you're sitting on a Google Hangout on a Wednesday afternoon the week before Christmas talking about extrication, you're exactly the person that Honeywell's looking for, or one of your friends are. So take a quick cell phone video, tell us why you think somebody should go to FDIC, and they could win a full free ride from our good friends at Honeywell to the world's greatest firefighter training conference in the world, hands down. And we're not just saying that because we're associated with it. It's just the facts. And you can have an opinion, but you can't argue with the facts. It's the largest, it's the oldest, it's the greatest. Ask any one of the 33,000 people who were there last year, and they'll tell you the same thing. I'd like to put out a huge thank you to my great partner and wonderful friend Erich Roden, and just probably one of the greatest blessings in my life, one of the best firefighters I've ever known, and a great editor-in-chief of FireRescue magazine. Thanks you for joining with us today. Aaron, always a blast to be hanging out with you, my friend. It's always a pleasure when I'm in New Jersey to get to see Aaron and my good friend Bill Hobson when I'm down there. And Dave, you're just an absolute blessing to fire engineering. Thank you for all your writing over the years and all your great support and your incredible passion for this field of extrication. Isaac, you're the new guy to the family, kind of. In the last few months, we've been getting to know each other. You're amazing, absolutely amazing. Just another tremendous blessing in fire engineering and fire rescue's life. Please keep writing for us and posting and researching this critically important stuff, especially in this holiday season. I think all of your comments about let's be careful out there on the highways. They're incredibly dangerous and people are extremely distracted. To all our Jewish friends out there, this is the first day of Hanukkah, and happy Hanukkah. We hope that this is a beautiful holiday for you, and we hope it's a peaceful and safe holiday for you. To all of our Christian friends, Merry Christmas. This is a wonderful, wonderful holiday, and we hope it's an incredibly blessed holiday for all of you. To anybody else out there that I missed, whatever you're celebrating, we hope you celebrate it well. If you're an agnostic or an atheist, we hope you enjoy the Christmas holiday days off that you get to do whatever you folks do, and we hope it's safe and pleasant for you. To everybody out there from Fire, on behalf of Fire Engineering, we'll be back on January the 7th. That's our next Hangout. We'll be with Steve Pegram and Aaron Heller. We'll be talking training. We hope to see you then. We hope everybody has a beautiful holiday season. We hope that the 2015 is an incredibly safe and wonderful year for you all. Our thoughts and prayers are with all of you out there serving during these holidays, to all of our service people. May God keep you safe. To all of our firefighters and cops, God keep you safe. And to all of you out there, thank you for your support. Thank you for your continued input. And we hope to see you all at FDIC. And if we don't, we hope to see you somewhere down the road in 2015. I'm Bobby Halton, and on behalf of all of us here today, thank you for joining with us. And please, be careful out there.